Yes! 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 So, everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. And if you didn't gather from that little collage of expressions at the beginning of the video, yes, we've been through the Oscars. The 91st Academy Awards has happened. That's it. Done and dusted for a year. Red carpet's rolled away. No doubt the A-listers are all nursing their hangovers from the Vanity Fair after party, or whatever party it was that they went to. Of course, I'm here to talk about the results. And, this being the Oscars, it doesn't make it easy. I should stress, for the record, I didn't stay up and watch the Oscars. I never do because I value my sleep too much. Being based in Britain, it's on really early in the morning. I also don't generally place a lot of stock in the Oscars either because I don't believe that the quality of a film equates to how many awards it gets. I mean, if you're going by that rationale, then loads and loads of films that didn't get nominated for awards last year theoretically aren't very good. You think of some things like Mission Impossible, Fallout, and Hereditary, and A Quiet Place. I think Fallout and Quiet Place got one Oscar nomination each. I think for sound editing, I know A Quiet Place. I'm pretty sure A Quiet Place got one. So awards do not equate to quality. This is a really, really important thing for me. Just because a movie doesn't win an Oscar or isn't even nominated for an Oscar doesn't mean it isn't good. I mean, this isn't just the Oscars. This applies to awards across the spectrum as far as I'm concerned. Books, music, art, whatever. A piece of art does not need an award to qualify it as a work of genius or as something significant. So I want to get that out of the way. So I'm very, very cynical towards Oscars and movie awards in general. That said, and at the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, there was some really, really noteworthy decisions this year, along with an almighty clangor of a decision that I'll get to in a minute. You can probably guess what that is. So let's list the positives. Olivia Colman winning Best Actress for The Favourite, magnificent. I thought she was going to get that. And for those in Britain who've been following Olivia Colman for the past 20 years, she's built up a real following, and now she is sort of emerged onto the global scene. She's got an Oscar, fantastic, really, really well deserved. I'm really glad she got that. Alfonso Cuarón got Best Director for Roma, terrific. He also got Best Cinematography, and by acting as his own DP, I believe he became the first director to actually win a cinematography Oscar while acting as his own DP. I believe that might be the case. Black Panther, its production and costume designers became the first African American women to ever win Oscars in those categories, which is really, really great. Black Panther also became the first ever comic book movie to win Best Original Score. This is for Ludwig Göransson, whose brilliant Senegalese Western Symphony mixture is really, really striking. Not even John Williams managed that way back in 1978 for Superman. He was Oscar nominated for that. He didn't win, so let that sink in. I think that actually might, personally, as somebody who is invested in soundtrack music and who has interviewed composers, including Ludwig Göransson, and as someone who writes a lot about soundtrack music, that, for me, was the most momentous win of the evening. That was really historic. That said, no less historic was Spike Lee's win for Best Adapted Screenplay for BlacKkKlansman. Spike Lee, amazingly, has never won an Oscar before, despite being one of America's chief chroniclers of race and racial injustice for the best part of 35 years now. And that's absolutely fantastic. I'm really, really glad he won that. It really, really deserved. So a nice spread of awards wins. I think it makes a nice case for diversity. This despite the fact this Oscar ceremony, as usual, was studded with controversial decisions, distinct absence of women directors. No Deborah Granick for Leave No Trace, no Chloe Zhao for The Rider. All very, very disappointing. Those were some of my favourite films from last year. The movie also ended up navigating the absence of a host actually pretty well, because Oscars hosts normally go down like a lead balloon, and people were kind of curious as to how that would go. It opened with Brian May doing We Will Rock You, which got all the A-listers out of their seats. It worked. That kind of set the tone early on, and not having a host didn't seem to affect the Oscars as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I believe there's been an uptick in viewership, so clearly that worked. Presumably they're going to be adopting that approach in future years. So you're waiting for the but, aren't you? So largely pretty good this year by Oscars standards, but of course it wouldn't be the Oscars without one almighty idiotic decision. It wouldn't be the Oscars if AMPAS, the American Motion Picture of Arts and Sciences voters, didn't let the side down at last minute, and true to form they did this year by awarding Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay to Green Book. Now, let me say, I reviewed Green Book on this channel. You can go and look up my review of Green Book. I didn't hate Green Book. I actually quite liked it. I liked it with significant caveats. Real weaknesses in the direction and screenplay, which are unbelievably simplistic, rely far too much on conveniences, spoon-feeding the audience about racial segregation in Jim Crow era America. It's very, very platitudinous, very soft-centered, very easy. However, the performances give it that bit of welly. The performances give it the complexity that it so desperately needs. And I'm really glad, incidentally, that Mahershala Ali got Best Supporting Actor for the film. His second Best Supporting Actor Oscar, obviously following Moonlight, although Viggo Mortensen lost out in the Best Actor category. I'm really happy about that. The Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay awards, I'm not happy about that at all. I mean, to suggest that Green Book is therefore the best film of 2018, it's nonsense. It isn't the best film of the year. I mean, weirdly enough, I find the Best Original Screenplay Oscar even more offensive because that is more specifically targeted. That pinpoints a very specific technical area of the filmmaking that has been nominated. And let's be honest, the writing for Green Book, despite the fact that the son of the subject of the film, Nick Vallelonga, son of Frank Tony Lip Vallelonga, portrayed by Viggo Mortensen in the film, was one of the credited scriptwriters on the movie. That sentimental attachment does not mean that the movie is well written, and it isn't well written. It plays the stalls in an unbelievably preachy, simplistic way. The script is not one of the strengths of this film, and that really galled me. I mean, I thought that particular award, Best Original Screenplay, was the favourites for the taking, and I'm appalled that they think that Green Book is somehow better written than The Favourite or Roma or any of the other films that was nominated in that category that year. So that kind of left a sour taste in the mouth, and it did allow Spike Lee the most honest reaction of the night. I mean, his obvious disgust at Green Book having won was the most honest and I have to say hilarious reaction of the evening. Apparently, he tried to leave the Dolby Theatre when the Best Picture winner was announced. Apparently he tried to leave and he came back and remonstrated a little bit with Jordan Peele, and apparently sat with his back to the podium while the acceptance speech was being kind of read out. That's hilarious. And then there was a brilliant bit later on in which various British reporters assailed him outside on his thoughts about the movie, and he was very, very cagey. He sort of stepped around it by using a British euphemism, which it's not my cup of tea. So it's kind of a weird mixture of him being absolutely elated at winning his own Oscar, while for the second time in his career being beaten by a very worthy, very ineffectual, very soft-centered interracial driving movie. Because let's not forget that back in 1990, when Do the Right Thing, which is a magnificent film, was Oscar nominated, that movie lost out to Driving Miss Daisy. So there is an eerie and more than a little ironic kind of parallel here with Spike Lee. So, but whatever, BlacKkKlansman is infinitely superior to Green Book. Most of the films in this year's Oscars race were superior to Green Book. I mean, I'd say Green Book was better than Bohemian Rhapsody. I'll give it that. And actually, I think it's a lot better than Vice. But Best Picture winner, Best Original Screenplay winner, no, sorry. So the Oscars, in its own kind of perverse way, the Oscars refuses to let me down. The Oscars plays out exactly as I thought it would. You know, there are eye-grabbing outfits. There are the usual kind of miasma of really, really good wins and utterly dunderheaded ones. It wouldn't be the Oscars without that. I mean, if there's one thing the Oscars is guaranteed to do, it's particularly if you report on movies and talk about movies like I do, the Oscars are always guaranteed to annoy you quite significantly, and indeed they have this year. So I would now like to know what you think about Oscars 2019. Drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner, and I'll see you soon. Bye.